Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our chat with Ashley Baxter from Monty Compost Co. with the Monty Monitor. In this segment, we'll be discussing the differences between compost containers and piles, how the Monty Monitor can be used with various compost setups, and what the future holds for composting technology. Let's get into it.
Is there a compost bin or a compost pile that you think works better? Like, is it a tumbler? Is it like just a pile? Like, what do you think, in your opinion, works best?
So I don't think there's any particular category of compost, container that is the best. But what I will say is the best is having two.
Yep.
So I think, and again, this kind of comes back to when people are just continuously composting. There is a period of time where your compost needs to just break down. And you can't, every time you add new materials to it, you're affecting that whole microbial population. You're not letting the older materials finish their decomposition process. So I think whether you have a tumbler, whether you have a bin, whether you have a pile, all of those can work, but making sure that once you've filled it up, you have that second location to let it rest, to let it finish breaking down on its own for, a matter of weeks, then that's probably much more critical than saying you need this one or that one. I can definitely say that for certain, setups, some things are better than others. I wouldn't recommend an open pile maybe in a city, just because sometimes, it can be a little bit more difficult to manage if you have a small backyard. But in saying that, maybe you can. I met this guy who had a 10-ton compost pile in right next to the city in Brisbane. And he had temperatures of it of 60, 70 degrees. I'm like, dude, you live in a wooden house. You got to be careful, because big compost piles can sometimes spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, he's like, oh, my neighbors keep complaining to the council. I'm like, they probably should be. So yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone how to live their compost life, but I will recommend that you've got some kind of setup that allows the finished material to continue breaking down and get to an end product.
Yeah. And so with that, can you take the monitor and have it in one compost pile and you're tracking a bev and take it to another one, or you need two separate monitors?
Yeah, so you can actually do that. If you want to get kind of a single time reading or something, we recommend using it with whatever your active pile is. So whatever the pile that you're adding to, that you're building up the structure of, that you're balancing the different nutrients, that's where we recommend using the monitor with, because that's where you need the most help. Once it gets to a balanced kind of later stage compost, there's not really much management you need to do. So it can be interesting to know, for example, what temperatures you're getting with it, but it's not really something that needs to be as hands-on.
Yeah. Okay, that's good, because then, I've got 5 piles at the moment. So yeah, it's good to be able to just go check on another pile. Yep, okay, it's still on track. It's working well. And then we go.
Exactly. Because, I think as well, and this is another tough one, just from a product perspective, is, Monty can be used in different ways. So it can be a tool that you just use for taking data measurements, but it also has this function as just a more general learning tool, like an educational tool. So when you start to get much more sophisticated systems like yours, it still has that benefit of collecting the data when you need it, but it also presents just that more comprehensive habit forming education, helping people be a better composter. So yeah, it is a very versatile tool, and making sure that we can deliver it to all our different kinds of composters is really that product mission.
Yeah. All right, that's good. So yeah, fits most people that want to compost and want to get a good product at the end, because everyone's composting, one, because they want to do something good with the scraps, and you want it for your garden because it's so nutrient heavy. Like it's the best thing you can have. That and a worm farm, the two best things you can have in a garden. And then, yeah, no need for buying fertilizer.
That's exactly it. And, there is a lot of really interesting research that kind of talks about local microbe populations and kind of the benefits. So, a lot of people obviously buy compost, from hardware stores and things like that. And that's better than nothing. But there is a lot of research coming out that's talking about keeping the microbes and the waste types from your garden, so from your green waste, and actually the microbes that are on that waste, composting it and then returning it back into that ecosystem, and how that can actually provide even further benefits. So there is a lot coming out that is just lending even more support to the benefits of DIY, make your own compost. Even if your compost operation is pretty low key, even if it's more just kind of that annual leaf pile that you manage and then put back in the garden, returning those nutrients, returning those microbes, all the different parts of your compost pile back into the local ecosystem of your garden is shown to have so many benefits. So yeah, I can't recommend composting enough for millions of reasons.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, it's the coming home party. All the microorganisms getting back together, kicking on.
Exactly.
All right, so I think everyone's got a good understanding of who Monty is now and the product that you supply. What's in the future? So you said you're doing more industrial products. Are you doing more stuff for retailers or going down the broader composting?
Look, it's a great question. And I think it's kind of the tough thing about such an emerging market like composting is that there's so many opportunities, and figuring out, what we're able to do, what's right for us, what the best kind of, priority to put first is always very tough. We are launching an industrial composting product. The reason for that is that the market is just a bit bigger. It's going to allow us to get to a larger volume for us to service these other markets like home composting. We've done mostly Australia for our expansion, but getting outside of Australia is so capital intensive, and it's so, it's a really big investment of resources to try and grow that brand. So kind of sticking on the home soil, literally, or rather the home compost, and figuring out how we can expand those product applications here before looking, beyond our shores to all the other global composters out there is kind of, I'd say, what's immediately next, and then what the longer term future is. So really just creating more tools for composters, refining our consumer product, and in future, our industrial product, to make sure that it doesn't have those bugs, doesn't have fully solves our composter problems, and then taking it to the world. If we're going to go a little bit further, we've seen so many benefits that our products, that our hardware, that the software, the data collection has created. So we see a lot of opportunities in, say, for example, different monitoring applications. So monitoring things like soil or nutrients or things like that, as well as a lot of really beneficial educational programs. So I think obviously our broader mission is just composting in general, but we've got a sweet spot for whenever we can use our technology to actually educate a lot of young people, like schools and things like that, and bring them into this compost movement. If we want to get to 100% of organic waste recycled, composting is such an important part of that. And, the place to start is with the youth and bringing that groundswell movement forward. So that was kind of a jumble of everything we want to do. There's a lot going on, and I think as you would know, growing a venture, sometimes you kind of have to take it quarter by quarter, year by year, and take on the opportunities that come up, because sometimes you just get a curveball that you've got to take on board. So yeah, that's kind of how we're seeing it. But our mission is just furthering the compost movement however we can.
Yep. That sounds like you've got some big plans in place, which is awesome. So thanks for joining us today, Ash. So everyone, if you want to follow Ash, I'll have links down below of her website for Monty Compost. You can get her products there. You can follow her journey. And one last question for today: what is your favorite thing to grow and why?
Oh, that's such a good one. My favorite thing to grow, and it's actually by virtue of the fact that I'm never able to grow anything else with this degree of success, is basil. So for some reason, I'm the other end of the circle of life. Like, I'm amazing at composting, of returning that organic material to the soil. But when it comes to coaxing and growing it back out of the soil, I'm not as successful there. And I don't know why. Like, I've tried so many different things, but I always fail. But the one plant that has never led me astray has been basil. I've always been able to grow huge amounts of it, and I've always been good with that. So that's what I'll say, just because it's embarrassing how many other plants that I've failed with.
That's awesome. You stick with what works. If you can grow basil, grow basil. I've actually got some growing indoors.
Exactly, it's good.
So middle.
Yeah, and I love pesto, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I love it. Just fresh whenever I want some, in the salad, on a sandwich. It's right there.
That's exactly it. And I just wanted to say as well, likewise, thank you so much for the amazing work you do with Aussie Green Thumb. I think we're both so conscious of the massive amount of education and work that needs to be done in this space, helping existing and new gardeners and composters. And we really are, fighting the good fight. So I'm so happy to have been able to share our story, and thankful for you giving us the platform to do so.
Thanks so much, Ash. It's a pleasure. Yeah, so everyone, this is Ash Baxter from Monty Compost. We're going to be having Ash back on for top 10 tips for composting in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you very much, Ash, and everyone leave a comment of what you took away as most valuable. All right, thanks.